Hey everyone, Sam Ovens here, and welcome to this training video in week 2 of the Consulting Accelerator program, Seeing for the First Time. So it took me an extreme amount of time to put this video together, and this video is, it's definitely the main part of all of the mindset training in this Consulting Accelerator program, and it really is everything which I have learned. I've attempted to bring together and boil down and distill everything I have learned from the last sort of 6 years, and from reading hundreds of books, and from tens of thousands of hours of research. So I've spent more time than I can even imagine or even describe learning all of this stuff and putting it all together. So this video is quite long, as I'm sure you can notice, but it is. I can definitely tell you that the lessons that you'll learn in this video, in the amount of time that it takes some people don't even learn these lessons in an entire lifetime. So that's what you've got to understand, is that you could go 85 years and not figure this information out. So don't skip it just because it's a long one or anything like that, because I promise you the changes in yourself, in your behavior, in your actions, in the results you're able to get, the profound changes you're going to experience in your life and your business for the better. This video is definitely worth your time, and it's definitely worth paying close attention to, taking lots of notes, and taking all of this stuff seriously. So let's jump right into it. So here's what we're going to cover today. So as I'm sure you've noticed from the first 3 videos that we covered, things are not as they seemed. There's strange shifts in reality and recurring events. So from showing you those first couple of videos, we can notice patterns inside our own existence. Like, we have these highs and these lows. We have things we do to build our lives up and build ourselves up, and we start feeling confident and happy. And then sometimes we do things to sabotage ourselves, and we crush it back down. And it's like we have this internal thermostat. Well, that's a very strange thing to really notice in life. I mean, it seems out of control, but then you can sometimes notice these patterns. And I'm sure you've started to notice in your own life too that these patterns occur. So things are not really as they seemed. And then I'm going to talk about feedback loops and something called the burden of consciousness. And this is a massive thing to learn. And then questioning my own existence and looking for answers to the big questions, like, why are there patterns between all of these different things? How could I find a pattern in my own existence that was pretty much exactly the same every single time? Like, how could this occur? And then major breakthroughs in quantum physics and the conflicts it has with classical science. Don't let the name put you off there, but there's basically two forms of science right now. And what's fascinating is the two conflict each other. One says that things are like this, and the other says, no, it's actually totally different. And it's quite fascinating to look at these. And I'm going to show you the major breakthroughs that I experienced once I looked into quantum physics. Then we're going to talk about society's current paradigm and its worldview and its bias to physical and material reality. So, society has a bias towards the material and the physical, and I'm going to explain how that's gotten people stuck. That's really what's made people think that they are who they are and they can't change. And it's really jammed, a lot of people in society on one side, and they're kind of trapped there, and they wish that they could change themselves. They wish they could do things better. They wish they could live a better life, make more money, start a business, get more clients, whatever. And I'm going to explain that. And then seeing for the first time. So my groundbreaking discovery and universal theory of everything. So I'd been noticing all of these different patterns between all of this different stuff, and I was trying to figure out myself and everything. And I had some major breakthroughs, and I really was able to pin together like a theory of everything in my whole life, and I'm going to share that with you. And it's the first time I've ever shared this with anyone, or anyone in the world ever. So this is definitely something which is a first, and I'm sure it's going to have profound changes for everyone when they see this. And then I'm going to unveil the new paradigm and its revolutionary new way of thinking and perceiving reality. So in the first couple of videos which we went over in week 2, we were kind of getting some momentum built up, but I'm really just going to unveil the whole thing. I'm just going to pull the sheet off it, show you the whole new paradigm and its revolutionary new way of thinking and perceiving reality. And if you're someone who has gotten stuck where they are in life, and you're not really happy in that situation, you want to improve yourself, you want to improve your situation, you want to make more money, you want to have, if you want things to change, then this paradigm is going to be of extreme value to you, because I was in that position myself, and through pulling this thing together, I was able to completely change things around. So I'm sure that you're able to do the same, because hundreds of other people have been able to use this to do the same for them as well. Because you would have seen all of my success stories, and I've helped a lot of people with this sort of stuff. And you're probably thinking, but Sam, what does this have to do with business? Like, this sounds pretty weird, pretty out there. I mean, why are we talking about quantum physics or science or theory of everything or anything like that? And you probably just want to be like, well, where's the sales stuff? Where's the stuff where we're gonna do Facebook ads? And like I've said, that stuff is coming, and it's gonna blow you away. But this stuff is really of more importance. And have you ever wondered how I went from broke in a garage in New Zealand, too shy to leave the house, and then seemingly out of nowhere, to owning consulting.com, making over 20 million, and changing the rules of the game for consulting as an entire industry? We went from pretty much being too afraid to leave the house, like too shy, broke completely, to bam, like this, in a very short amount of time. Have you ever wondered how that happened? And then have you ever wondered how seemingly out of nowhere again, I helped record numbers of others achieve what's considered impossible? So, it's considered impossible for a person who's extremely shy and introverted, who's broke, no qualifications, no money, no anything, who's too afraid to leave the house. It's considered impossible for that person to just come out of nowhere and just take over a consulting industry. And then if that's not enough, it's considered impossible for someone to just come out of nowhere and teach 21 people how to make $1 million, and they actually make $1 million, and then help 452 people get to 6 figures. We recently collected some testimonials and stuff for people, and I had way more millionaire students than I even imagined. We're at 21 millionaires now, and 452 at 6 figures. How does that happen? My logo was made in Keynote. My Sam Ovens logo, it was actually made in Keynote. You can go look at it. My website's had spelling mistakes on it, and it's got a broken opt-in form for 3 years running. I don't have any business cards, even today. Don't have a phone number. Obviously have a cell phone, but we don't have a phone number for our company or anything. My last blog post was 2.5 years ago. And I don't have a Snapchat. I don't have an Instagram. My Twitter account is pathetic. I think I've posted on it like 30 times or something. And I post on Facebook once every month, and that's pushing it. That's like a busy social media schedule for me. And I've written 0 books, spoken on 0 stages, and been on Oprah 0 times, and I don't have a college degree, and I don't have any certificates of any kind. I am the most unqualified and unprofessional person that really could exist. I haven't followed any of the rules. And how did I do it? Well, I transcended myself. And what does that mean? You're probably thinking, what on earth is that? Well, here's how we can describe these. And this was like kind of, what was it called? Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something. Well, pretty much a human being can go through these different stages, or they have these different needs. And, you start off, like when you're in absolute when you're in absolute survival mode, all you really care about is water, warmth, and rest. And then you pretty much, the next one up is safety needs. Like, you just want to make sure that you're secure. And then you've got above that, belonging and love. Like, you want to have a girlfriend, you want to have a relationship and stuff. And then above that, you've got prestige and feeling of accomplishment. You want to achieve something. And then self-actualization is realizing that you really do have personal potential and that you really are powerful. And then there's a level above that, and that's called transcendence. And that's when you completely blow out of this whole model, and that's when you start to be able to do some truly, truly, truly amazing things. That's when that's when you start getting into the 8 figures. That's when you're going to start making 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, and that's when you really do understand that you can do anything. It's just a decision. It's just whether you want to do it or not. But if you do want to do it, it's on. It's done already at that point that decision is made. And that's how I've been able to transcend myself up into that point. Like, if I want to do it, it's done. And if I'm going to compete in it, it's going to be won. And that's what transcendence is. And this is the current school of thought. And this is what it says you have to do. Like, most people out there in society today, it's quite sad. This is what most people think. And they think to make money, you've got to grind and hustle. And I see a lot of people, and they're writing like 6 blog posts a day, and they're just doing so much social media and everything, and they're grinding it. It's like grinding an axe against a stone, and it's just not really moving very far. And so grind and hustle, don't get me wrong, it's a great skill to have, but it's not enough on its own. Like, I witnessed my dad, who was a builder, and he pretty much broke his back every day building stuff and lifting around heavy objects. And then when I went to go work for him, he told me, he was like, son, you don't want to be a builder. There is better ways to make money. And that's where I learned that if you just bust your ass all the time, you're not going to make money. And then the other one is that you need to be like uber qualified. Like, you need to get 6 MBAs or a PhD or something. And that's not true, because there is a lot of people with MBAs and PhDs who are broke. And there's a lot of them who can't even get jobs. And then the other one is that you have to wait until you're old. Like, the only way to get successful and get what you want is just to, work and save. Don't buy any lattes for, 60, 70 years. And what sort of a life is that? And then there's be famous and social. Like, go out and do a TEDx talk, speak on stage, write a book, get on Oprah, just be this social butterfly. And, well, a lot of people are doing that, and it's not really working either. And so all of these ones, they're pretty much not working anymore. And they're not working very well. And this is what the current school of thought says you have to do. But I created a revolutionary new way of thinking and viewing reality that completely changes the game. And I was blind, but now I see. And so if you're wondering what this has to do with money, it has more than you can possibly imagine. So let's get to work and show you what it is, why it's different, how it works, and most importantly, how you can start using it in your life and business right now, today. Like, I'm going to show you this whole thing, but then we're going to be taking action immediately, because if there's a time for a change, it's always now. And so we're going to make sure that you guys thoroughly understand all of this, have some breakthroughs, and then bam, we're going to put our foot on the gas, and it's going to be on. We're going to be making changes, making improvements, and from here on out, your life and business is just going to start peaking up. So things are not as they seem, some strange shifts in reality and reoccurring events. So far in week 2, we covered where you are in life right now and how it's all you're doing, and you designed it and built it to spec. Like, the first thing you have to understand is that you did everything. Where your life is right now, you are solely responsible for that. And then society's current paradigm and its understanding of the static self. And it really comes from the question, who am I? Like, if you answer the question, who am I, that is, once that sense of self gets really strong and defined, then it's like you can't change, you can't move. Like, that's just who you are, and you should just be yourself, stick to your roots and all of that. And then I introduced the alchemy paradigm and its new understanding of the becoming self. And the question changed. It was, instead of who am I, it's who am I becoming? And then facing your dark side and denial of cause and effect, and how that is the root of all problems. So I told you how, my pattern of existence was, I would go out on Friday night, get drunk, then on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'd feel sorry for myself, and pretty much by Thursday, Friday, I could pull myself back together, clean up my apartment, start, eating healthy again, start grooming and presenting myself well and getting some work done, but then it would just come around again and bam, I'd smash it back down by going out and drinking again. And so, it was really just denial of that caused all the issues. And facing your dark side is when you face the music and you take responsibility for your actions, and you look at everything as action, reaction. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and we also understand the mirror and how our judgments of others is simply just a reflection of our own insecurities, and how if we don't invest in ourselves, others won't invest in us. And then understanding your pattern of existence and how you do one thing is how you do everything, and the waveform chart. So, the way you do one thing, the way you show up to one thing is how you're going to show up to everything. So, generally if a person is late, then they're late to everything. If a person is scruffy in one area, then they're often scruffy in every area. And then we discuss the duality and the division of opposites and how your mind needs it to make sense of reality. So, your brain is basically just an on-off system. It's just your beliefs and your reality and everything, it's pretty much just programming. You just have a scale inside your head, and you just place rocks on one side or the other. And so if you've got something like times tables, and if you've just stacked more rocks on the negative for times tables, then you're not gonna be good at times tables. And then how you form beliefs by stacking stones on one side or the other, and we covered that one. And then how your beliefs literally become your reality and define who you are as a person. So, whatever side of the scales we have more rocks on, that becomes our belief, and our beliefs become our reality. And, our reality is everything we know. Like back then, because a teacher said that I was bad at times tables one time, I made that my reality. That's who I was, and that was it. Like I was bad at times tables, and if you asked anyone, they would say the same thing. And I did that. I just coded that into my brain. I programmed it that way, and I've been able to undo it and completely change it. And then we talked about the Myers-Briggs test and your binary poles. So at this point, you should have done the Myers-Briggs, gotten your 4-letter code, written it down, and then you should look at your binary poles, like the things which you're not good at, and the things which you need to work on or understand that the way you've programmed yourself. These are your weak spots, and how quite often the best way to change is to start doing some of the opposites, because it starts breaking you out of that self which you've really defined for yourself. And it allows you to start making some changes in your life and your business. So like if you've always had a messy office, clean it up. If you've always been an extrovert, do something quiet and reflective, because often, extroverts that always want to be out and social, they never get any time to quietly reflect and think about, what the essence of their work is. And then a lot of people who are introverted and really understand their work, they need to be more extroverted so that they can go out and communicate with other people what this masterpiece really is that they've got. And so the question really is, if we got that much wrong, like if we thought that we were this one person, like who am I? If we just defined this sense of self and we made it extremely strong, and if we thought that's all there was and that's just what reality was, well, imagine how much else we have got wrong. Like if we got that much wrong and we're totally unaware of it, What else do we have wrong? And what else are we unaware of? That's the real question. And seriously, it's more than you can possibly imagine. We have so much wrong about our psychology, our brain, our self, our everything, that it's just truly mind-blowing. And in this video, I'm going to reveal it all. So now that we've got the basics covered, let's dig into the massive breakthroughs in this new alchemy paradigm and worldview. So let's start off with feedback loops and the burden of consciousness. And don't freak out if that title sounds complicated or strange or anything. I'm going to explain this in seriously simple terms. So have you ever wondered why there is such a massive gap between the rich and the poor? Like, people are always talking like the rich get richer, the poorer get poorer, and the elite, they're so far ahead, and there's nothing we can do down here when we're only making 20 grand a year, 30 grand a year. Like, I'm sure you've noticed there's a huge gap between the rich and the poor. And have you ever wondered why? And if you look at this is back from 2007. I couldn't find really new charts, but the top 1%, look at the gap. Look at that gap there. The top 1% just is miles ahead. And, everyone else is quite close, but it's just like the top is just miles ahead. And, here's this guy from New Zealand called Graham Hart. He's the richest man in New Zealand. And last year, in 2016, his net worth leaped by $6.4 billion in 1 year. And this is just a dude in New Zealand. $6.4 billion in a year. And the average salary in New Zealand is 40 grand. And Graham Hart made 6.4 billion last year. Look at the difference in the zeros. And that's 64,000 million. Think about that for a moment. So imagine making 64,000 million in 1 year. Imagine if someone was just like, how much do you make? And you're like, just 64,000 million a year. And that's $17.5 million a day, to put that in perspective. And that's including weekends, including sick days, if he has any, and Christmas. Even on Christmas, if he's taking the day off and he's sitting around with his family opening presents, that day he makes $17.5 million. Imagine that. Like, that's just out of this world. And the thing is Graham Hart's only a little fly, really, compared to Warren Buffett. Because Warren Buffett's net worth is $62 billion. And look at the curve on this thing. Look at how, when he was my age, he had way less than me. I'm actually way further ahead than Buffett for my age. But look at this curve here. Look at how it absolutely just goes exponential in these later years here. It's quite remarkable. And on days where these guys are pissed off and feeling sorry for themselves, they're making $17.5 million a day. So why does the average person have less than $500 in their bank account and get hung up on buying a latte for like $4? How can someone make $17.5 million a day and then another person is sweating the decision to buy a latte? And the same is true in sports. It's not just money and business. Like, why are players like Michael Jordan so insanely good compared to the average person with a basketball? Like, if I just throw you a basketball, like, how good are you? You're probably not that good, unless you're a basketball player, sorry. And then, imagine someone who's the best player in the college school, in the high school team or something, or at college. Imagine putting them next to Michael Jordan when he was at his peak. Like, there is such an insane difference. The amount of difference is pretty much the same as it is in business. Like, the difference between people who can't buy a latte and people who make $17.5 million a day. And it's like these people aren't human and exist in a world of their own. And most people label them freaks or special. A lot of people, they always think, he's just a special, or he's special, who was born that way, or these people are like freaks of nature or something. Like, people just label them as these things and think that there's no way anyone else can do that. And the reason why is most people haven't been taught about how distribution works and what feedback loops are. And feedback loops are one of the most devastating things that exist in the entire universe. And truly understanding these things and truly building them into your daily practice and everything in your daily life, it's going to have devastating outcomes in terms of your success. Like, you're just going to skyrocket up. But if you get these things wrong, then you skyrocket down. And a lot of people get them wrong. So most people believe distribution looks like this. And distribution is just, how a group of people, if they, for their income, like if you've got a group of people, how it's sort of distributed. And people think that the graph is linear and it's just a straight line. And so we've got lower class, middle class, and rich people. And this is what most people think. Oh, lower class. I'm just lower class. I make, I don't know how much low class people make, 20, 30 grand a year or something. And, that's just what I do. I'm a lower class person. And then the middle class, makes 100 grand a year or something. And then the rich people, they might make $1 million a year or something like that. And that is that's how it is distributed. That's how most people think. And the reason why most people think this is because we have grading systems that are limited. In school we have like pass and fail. It's just like two sides. So if you fail, you're only one away from a pass. Or A, B, C, and D. If you get a B, you only think that you're just one step away from the person who gets the A. And if you get a C, you're only 2 steps away from the person that gets an A. So you don't really think it's that big. Or 0% to 100%. If you get 80% and some guy gets 90 or 100, you think that that's not that far away. And then we have not achieved, achieved, merit, and excellence. And then when it comes to education, we have uneducated, and then high school, and then bachelor's degree, then master's degree, and then PhD. And people even say first class honours, except that's out of a class of 30 people. Like, first in class sounds real awesome till you find out that there was 30 people in it. And then qualified and non-qualified. Like, oh, is this person qualified? Oh, yes, they're qualified. Okay, they're awesome. Or, no, that person's not qualified. It's like, this is how people have come to believe that distribution looks like this. Where in reality, it really, according to the grading system, a PhD is the highest qualified person that exists. If you wanted to go out and get as qualified as you possibly could, you'd get a PhD. And if you got a PhD at Harvard or something, then you should be extremely qualified. But the average PhD salary is 100 grand a year. And Graham Hart makes $17.5 million a day. And he's some dude you didn't know about in New Zealand. So how does that happen? How can the most qualified person in the world, on average, make absolutely nothing in comparison? And like I said, most people think distribution looks like this: lower class, middle class, rich people, or non-educated, educated, MBA and PhD. They think this is how income is distributed. If I want to make more money, I've just got to become more educated in this education system. But they have no idea. MBAs and PhDs aren't even on the map. So when you look at like the top 1%, like how income's distributed, it's just like this, and PhDs aren't even near. They're on that long, long, long tail over there. They're not even on the map when it comes to income. And this is how people get it wrong. And any form of qualification is a false sense of entitlement because it makes the person think that they're qualified and that they deserve reward from the market. And the market is a fair judge of value, and it has a habit of rewarding those who have value and giving nothing to those that don't have value. And when qualified people don't get what they want from the market, they say the system is vulgar and bankrupt and they deserve to be paid more. They get angry at the market. They're like, the market's wrong because I have a qualification, I should be getting paid more. But people just don't get it, and they need to wake up. So why do these massive gaps in distribution occur? Like, have you ever wondered why things look like that? Why is there such a steep curve? Well, most people, they're like, tax the rich, we deserve more, and this system is corrupt, and I'm qualified. Most people at the bottom end of the scale, they get angry at the people at the top and they complain about the system. But the people at the top, no amount of anything that anyone throws at them, it just doesn't really change anything. And they're like, oh boy, when will these people wake up? And exponential distribution is impossible to stop. And it's quite literally a law of nature and the universe. And so you've got most people and then the top 1%, and then you've got income. And what we can do is if we look at where, if we look at this, we can apply this rule called the 80-20 rule. And pretty much the 80% of this curve here, it only has 20% of the income. And 20% of this curve has 80% of the income. So the massive part only has the tiny bit, and the small part has the massive bit. Like, this is what we call the 80-20 rule. And whenever 80-20 is present, and it's present everywhere, it means that there's exponential distribution. And this exponential distribution of anything can be called the 80-20 principle. But most people don't even know what the 80-20 principle is. Or they do know what it is, but they don't know that it's related to exponential distribution. Or they might know what it is, but they just have no idea about why it exists. Like, why does 80-20, why does it come into existence? Like, why does it happen? It's a really important question that it's probably one of the most important questions in the world. Like, why does 80-20 happen? And most people have no idea how it comes to be that way. And let's take a look in nature. Like, we've looked at income and we've looked at Michael Jordan, but now let's take a look in nature. Like, let's look around and see how distribution works there. So 80% of the planet is water and 20% of the planet is land. 80% of land is in 20% of the countries. So 80% of all the land that exists, it's in 20% of the countries. And then 80% of the sunshine is in 20% of the countries. And then 80% of the snow and rain, it's in 20% of the countries. And 80% of the crime is committed by 20% of the people. And then 80% of health issues are experienced by 20% of the people. And 80% of struggle and pain is experienced by 20% of the people. And so it doesn't matter where you really look, 80-20 presents itself everywhere. And 80% of the Earth's population lives in 20% of the countries. 80% of the country's population lives in 20% of the states. So in America, like 80% of the population lives in 20% of the states. And then inside a state, 80% of any state population lives in 20% of the cities. And then inside any city, 80% of any city population lives in 20% of the suburbs. And then in any suburb, 80% of the suburb lives in 20% of the streets. And 80% of the traffic jams happen on 20% of the streets. 80% of the traffic jams happen during 20% of the daytime. So, most of the day there's no traffic. But then, boom, it just all comes on in the morning and at night. That's where all the traffic is. And it's only ever on some streets. And, there's some streets that you never see a car on them, and then others it's just always on. And 80% of car accidents happen on 20% of the roads. So imagine complaining about 80% of the world being water. Like, imagine getting angry at that. Oh, why is there 80% of the earth? Why is it water? That's just unfair. This is unjust. And this is pretty much what people are doing when they are saying, like, the system is corrupt. Like, we deserve more. I'm qualified. Like, it's the same thing as complaining about the world being 80% water. And then imagine complaining about 20% of the countries having 80% of the sunshine. The sunshine system is corrupt. Like, give us more sunshine. Give it back. I mean, it's crazy. And imagine complaining that 80% of the US population lives in 20% of the states. It's like, imagine if people were like, I demand people leave New York and California to come and live in Maine. And we've got this 80-20 distribution again. And you just can't get angry at the system and how it works that way, because it's how it happens with everything. And this is a law of nature, and no human effort can change it. So the real question is, why does this happen? Instead of getting angry at it and trying to blame it and trying to pin it on other people, we should really understand, why does this happen? And the answer to that is feedback loops. And I'm going to explain to you what feedback loops are right now. And I'm going to make it very simple. So what are feedback loops? Well, remember how we discussed cause and effect in week 1 and throughout week 2. We've discussed cause and effect and how a cause is taking an action, and then an effect is the reaction that we get from that. So if I go into the sunshine and I stay there for far too long without any sunscreen on, that's a cause, and the effect is going to be that I get really sunburned, right? Cause and effect. Well, a feedback loop is when the effect from a cause feeds back in and creates another cause, and it keeps feeding back on itself, and it just loops like this. It goes round and around and around and around, and it starts going exponentially up or exponentially down, based on whether the feedback is, positive or negative. And so feedback loops occur when the effect from a particular cause loops around and feeds back in as another stronger or weaker cause. And when this happens, the cause and effect relationship becomes self-fulfilling and amplifies or weakens exponentially. And so we've got a number of people running, and then the overall level of panic. Like, this is a feedback loop. So if we have a lot of people running down a road, then the overall level of panic is going to increase, because the more people that start running, the more people are going to start panicking. And then that's going to then again affect the number of people that are running. And then that's going to again affect the overall level of panic, and then it's going to keep building and building and building. It's going to amplify. But then it's just like, if you've ever been to a party or something before, it's like once people start leaving, then all of a sudden everyone is just leaving, and then whoa, everyone's gone. And it's the same again. Like, this can happen positive or negative. So if lots of people are joining the party, then it's going to start to get positive, and more people are joining. But as soon as people start leaving, it's going to start spiraling down. So these things can spiral up or spiral down, depending on whether the feedback is positive or negative. And the temperature of the air. So if the temperature of the air is hot, then people are going to use air conditioning. But when we use air conditioning, it releases CO2 gases, which cause the atmosphere to get hotter, which means that using air conditioning makes the earth hotter again. And then so we have to use more air conditioning. Then that's going to put out more CO2 gases, and it just keeps spiraling around and around and around and around. And that's how it starts getting more positive, more positive, more positive. It just spirals up. And then people living in a city and people moving to that city. So if there's the more people that are living in a city, that means the more people are going to move to that city. And then the more people that are moving to that city, that means the more people are going to live in that city, and it just feeds around. And that's why we see cities like New York, where it's just everyone is just here. But then there's other cities like Wyoming and stuff that there's hardly anyone there. It's because once a lot of people start doing it, way more people start doing it. And it has a feedback loop effect like this. And money earned in a bank, or money in a bank account, and interest earned on money in the bank. So, once you start building up a whole bunch of money, you start to earn a lot of interest on that money. And then that affects that you have more amount of money in your bank account, and then that feeds back on to interest earned on that money, and it keeps spiraling up and up and up, and it starts going exponential, like Warren Buffett's net worth and stuff like that. And then the increase in the price of a stock, and more of an increase in the price of a stock. So the biggest contributor to the price of a stock is the price of a stock. So if a stock price goes up, then it's likely to go more up. But if a stock price goes down, it's likely to go more down. And this is why we can have feedback loops. This is why stocks can just start spiking up like crazy, and also why they can just drop down real crazy. And then the number of people clapping in a crowd and the new number of people clapping. So I'm sure you've been to a show before or something, and one person starts clapping. It's like a slow clap, and he's just on his own for a little bit. And then boom, everyone starts clapping, and then someone stands up, and then everyone's standing up. Well, this is a feedback loop occurring. And this may seem too simple and insignificant to you. And don't be fooled about the devastating power that feedback loops possess. Like, this is a simple concept. That is absolutely correct. But you need to understand how powerful these things are. And just to show you, let's observe a feedback loop in nature right now. So I'm going to show you a video of a feedback loop in nature so you can see it happening. So I'm going to just play this video, and you can just watch it happen. So we have one guy. I'll comment on this, and I'll just skip it forward at different parts. But we have one guy just dancing on his own right here. He's just dancing all on his own. And now a guy comes to join him. So there was one guy, and now there's two guys. Two people dancing on their own. And they just keep going on their own here. And I'm just fast forwarding it a little bit. Here comes another guy. Now we start to get more. You can watch this starting to happen. The more people that are joining means the more people that start joining. And as more people start running in, we get more people running in. You've got to remember this started as one guy. This is a feedback loop happening. The more people that are joining the crowd and dancing, the more people that are joining the crowd and dancing. You've got to remember this started as one person. And we have more people just running in, and I'll fast forward it some more, and you can see pretty much this entire place ends up a massive, festival or a massive dance party. And this is actually how all crowds form. Like, this is how everything pretty much forms. It starts off with one sort of person, and then another guy comes along, and it starts off quite slow, but then as more people start joining, more people start joining. And that is a feedback loop in nature. And so that shows you, how these things, this isn't just a concept which I've explained to you. I mean, we can go out and observe these things everywhere. And if you've ever wondered why that happens, or why one guy starts clapping in the crowd, and then eventually, whoom, everyone's clapping and standing up and cheering and all sorts, well, it's feedback loops. And it's the number of people dancing, and then the new people starting to dance. So as we have more people, the more people that are dancing, then more new people are going to start joining to dance. Like, this is what happens. It's just a feedback loop. It just keeps going around and around and around. And then if we look at this on a chart, if we have time at the bottom, and then number of people dancing up here on the side, then we can see that the distribution would start to curve like this. It started off as one guy for quite a long time, and then it was two guys for quite a long time, and then three for quite a long time, and then whoa, it just started going like that. And this is 80-20 rule. This is it happening in nature. You saw it right in front of your eyes. So what we see is that for 80% of the time, there was like 20% of the people dancing. But then for 20% of the time, there was 80% of the people dancing. And that's the 80-20 rule in nature. And what's fascinating is it didn't stop there either. This video is on YouTube. You can watch it. You can see what it's called there. But after it got uploaded to the internet, millions of people started joining the dance. Millions of people started coming to watch it. You can see 14 million views and then 55,000 likes. Well, that shows you a feedback loop that exists there is a feedback loop that's going to exist on the internet as well. And this exponential distribution of 80-20 is caused by feedback loops, and it is a law of nature. And trying to fight exponential distribution and 80-20 is like trying to stop people walking on the middle part of the stairs. So I'm sure if you've looked in your house, if you've got carpet, 80% of the wear on that carpet, it's going to be on 20% of the carpet. And it's impossible to try and fight it. And if you try and fight it, you will end up totally worn out and make zero effect. You can't fight it. But what do feedback loops have to do with our mind? You're probably thinking, well, Sam, I get the concept now, I get what it is, and I've seen it happen, but what does this have to do with me? What does it have to do with my mind and making money and starting a business? Well, feedback loops and the burden of consciousness. This is the next thing which we're going to talk about. So let's do a quick exercise. All right? So pay attention, and we're going to do a quick exercise here. Don't do anything else right now. You just want to be focusing. So whatever you do, do not think about this, okay? I'm going to tell you something and do not think about it. Just whatever you do, don't do it. And promise not to think about this. All right? So don't think about purple elephants. Okay, now what are you thinking about right now? And you're probably thinking about purple elephants, right? Well, this is the human mind. And what one thinks is what one thinks about. Whatever we think is what we end up thinking about. And then what we think about is what we think, and then what we think is what we think about, and this is a feedback loop. This is a spiral in our own mind. And I told you about feedback loops, cause and effect relationships that feed on each other. Well, we have these in our own mind. What you think is what you think about, and what you think about is what you think. And these spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral on top of each other. And we have mental feedback loops. And a mental feedback loop occurs when one thought causes an effect of more thought, which then creates more thought and sets off a vicious, self-fulfilling cycle. And we can have negative feedback loops. So negative mental feedback loops. So one tiny, meaningless thought can set off a spiral and make somebody physically or mentally sick very quickly. So what you think is what you think about, and if you think about something bad like, oh my God, my throat's getting sore, then you'll be thinking, oh, my throat's getting sore, and it's going to spiral out of control until your throat is so sore that you're in a lot of trouble. And like with me at school, one teacher told me one time that I'm bad at times tables, and I kept playing that again and again in my mind. I kept replaying that situation, and then I thought, I'm really bad at times tables, and then I'm bad at times tables, I'm really bad at times tables, and this thing just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and form a belief, which then becomes an ultimate reality. And, you might think, I'm getting overheated. Like you might be in the back of a car and you think, I'm getting overheated, then I'm getting really overheated. And then before you know it, it spiraled so far to the point that you're so uncomfortable and feeling sick because you're so overheated. And one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and form a belief, which then becomes an ultimate reality. And we can also have positive mental feedback loops. So what you think is what you think about. And one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and make somebody physically or mentally invincible very quickly. So you could think, I'm good at spelling. And then you're going to think, well, I'm really good at spelling. I'm good at spelling. I'm really good at spelling. And this can spiral on itself and become really strong. And then you know, whatever that belief is, if you believe you're really good at spelling, then of course you're going to be really good at spelling. It will become your ultimate reality. And if you think, I'm going to ace this exam, I'm really going to ace this exam, you know, that can spiral and feed on itself until you really are going to ace this exam. You know, one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and form a belief, which then becomes an ultimate reality. And these vicious cycles can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And they can build you up to become Michael Jordan and the best athlete or businessman in the world, or they can smash you down till you get deeply depressed and take your own life. You know, they can do one or the other. Like, they can really make you into something great, or they can really ruin your life and run you into countless issues. And this is what I call the burden of consciousness. And a thought can become a vicious, widespread, and person-defining mind virus. So remember, I was talking about mind viruses in week 2. Well, a thought can become a mind virus. It depends how it starts circling on that feedback loop. And mankind has been in a big hurry to understand what's out there in space. You know, everyone's been looking out there like, oh, I wonder what the answer to our own minds, and I wonder what the answer to existence and everything is. That it has forgotten what's here in its own mind. So do you think you're in control of your own thoughts? And tell me then, where do your thoughts come from? Like, can you tell me where your thoughts come from? And thousands of random thoughts occur to you at random times and seemingly come out of nowhere. Well, where do they come from? And mankind's out there looking in space, wondering if they will find the answer there. And it's tragic. But that's all about to change with the discovery of this new paradigm and worldview. So I'm going to show you where they come from, how you can control them, and set off the feedback loop in the right direction, so that you can have self-fulfilling thoughts that are going in the right way instead of in the wrong way. And this is a revolutionary way of thinking. It's so profound, it's like seeing for the first time. So questioning my own existence and looking for answers to the big questions. So after discovering these things about my own consciousness, I was able to change it and influence it however I wanted. And conceptually and theoretically, it made sense. I discovered feedback loops. I could point to them in a crowd forming. I could draw a diagram on a piece of paper. I understood it theoretically. But I needed to see tangible results to test it and see if I had really figured this stuff out. Because a concept and a theory without some sort of results is just, that's a concept and a theory. That's like philosophy or psychology without results. And, I never really trust anything unless I can see some sort of results. And so this is what happened. I was 21 years old, shy, anxious, clueless, not smart at all, no degrees, no certificates, nothing. I had about $500 in my bank account. This is a picture of me here. And I was in 50 grand in student debt. I owed a lot of money from my degree, which I didn't even finish. And then this is me at 26 years old, owner of consulting.com, redefining the entire consulting industry, and $20 million a year plus in income, and $0 in debt, not a single penny. And how did that happen? You know, this is an exponential curve. I was at 21, I was down here, like literally $500, and my net position was really minus $49,500 because I was in debt, so I was in the negatives. This graph should actually be going down. And then by 26 years old, up at 20 million income and wealth. So, you know, this happened. This really did happen. And, you know, if you ask anyone who knew me back then, they will confirm that that is precisely who I was back then, and that this is how the results all started to curve like that. Well, it happened because I thoroughly understand mental feedback loops, and I understand feedback loops and how they exist in nature. So I thought to myself, you know, I understood this concept first and foremost. I wrote it down and I thoroughly understood it. I observed other feedback loops happening in nature. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to test this on myself. So I thought to myself, I'm going to master business. And then I thought, well, I'm really going to master business. And then I'm going to master business, well, I'm really going to master business. And then it started escalating and cascading. And then before long, I'd actually mastered business. And one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and form a belief which then becomes an ultimate reality. You know, I was at my job at Vodafone, and just one tiny decision to quit and start my own business, that didn't seem like anything back then. But that one decision really spiraled and went out of control until you know, I started making more money than the CEO does at Vodafone. And one tiny meaningless thought can set off a spiral and form a belief which then becomes an ultimate reality. And I've underlined ultimate reality because that became my reality. I used to have a reality that was very sad and full of anxiety, and now I have one that is totally different. And things were not as they seemed. Doctors, scientists, professors, and world-leading experts, teachers in the entire world said that people are the way they are and don't change. That's what everyone said. But somehow I was able to do it, and I could repeat the experiment over and over again with anything, even new topics. You know, it wasn't just one topic, I could complete it with two, and it wasn't just 1 year, I could, you know, use a feedback loop the next year, and I just kept doing it again and again and again. I had hundreds, if not thousands, of different situations where I proved it for myself. And if that's not evidence enough, I did it with hundreds of other people too. I created 21 millionaires, more than 451 people now making more than 6 figures. And I really started having some fun with this new understanding of my own consciousness. And I learned a ton of topics. Like I learned finance, accounting, I learned statistics, I learned all about digital marketing, I learned about sales, I learned about consulting, I learned about strategy, I learned about my own mind and psychology and human consciousness. Like I learned a ton of different stuff. And my mind became like an algorithmic optimization machine. You know, before I just used to think, poor me, and there's nothing I can do about it, I'm just stupid. But now it's like my brain was just like an algorithm. It was just like, and it could just drill down and find anything it wanted. And something peculiar started to appear to me. No matter what topic it was, they all seemed interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And what I have on my computer, I have this Google Drive folder, and it's called Research and Development. And whenever I'm researching something or doing an experiment or watching a documentary or watching a movie, or if I'm going through my Facebook ad data, or I'm going through all these different spreadsheets I've got and, you know, really looking for things, I store it all in this one folder called Research and Development. And this folder has gotten big over time. It's the folder that which lots of people want to look into in my mastermind and stuff. This is where all of my experiments and studies and research go on. and I even have other people who help me research different things. And so as I started to research all of this different stuff, it started to occur to me that just like I found patterns in my own existence and showed you how to track them for yourself with that, pattern of existence worksheet, I found interconnected patterns between every single subject I ever drilled, even though they had nothing to do with each other. And I found interconnected patterns between Facebook ads and financial markets, and Facebook ads and biology, and consciousness and computer networks, and the thoughts you have in your own mind and the outcome of a sales call. So I started to notice that whatever sort of judgment or thought I had in my mind when I spoke to a prospect, that had an influence on the outcome of that call. So if I judged that someone was definitely going to buy by looking at his application, his or her application, and then if I did the call, quite a lot of the time I would affect that they didn't buy. And then, a lot of the time I thought someone wouldn't buy, and then they would buy. And then, a lot of the time as I started to get thoughts in my own mind about things, I would affect the way the sales call went. And wait for it, this one is a big one. Facebook ads and you watching them. So I noticed that if I used to watch my Facebook ads too closely and check in on them every minute of the day, different things would happen to them. And if I didn't watch them all day and I kind of let them be for at least 24 hours before checking them again, it was a totally different thing. And finding the interconnectedness of everything that existed became my obsession. Like I thought, how could this be? How could there be these different things that are all interconnected? And I became obsessed with it and started trying to figure out why. And this one was on another level in terms of complexity to understand. It took me years. I've been investigating this thing for years, and for a long time I just found nothing. But then one day I came across something that changed everything, and it's called quantum physics. And don't worry if that sounds crazy, I'm going to make it very simple for you. So don't let the name confuse you, this is going to be dead simple. So there's two types of science right now in the world, and they're called quantum physics and classical physics. And let's start with the main one everybody is aware of. And it's classical physics. This is the one that is the main science right now. Most people are well aware of this. And classical physics says that things are things. So that if we saw a tree, we'd be like, that is a tree. And we go up to it, we can knock on it, it's a solid tree, that's a tree. And a desk is a desk. You knock on your desk right now, it's made out of wood or glass or whatever, that's a solid desk. And that a person is a person, they're made of blood, flesh, and bone, and all of that stuff. And they're a person, that's it. And classical physics says that classical physics is the study and understanding of the material world. And that's things we can see, touch. And physical things we can touch and see, like a tree, desk, or person. And you can see your own hand right now, correct? You can look at your hand. Look at it and touch it with your other hand. It's physical. You can touch it, you can feel it. And classical physics says that things are things, and that an object is separated and isolated from another object. So we've got, a person over here, and then we've got a tree over here. And these two things are separate. There's say 30 feet of distance in between the two of them. And then we have a person here, isolated, and then we have a tree here, totally isolated. These two things are totally separate and isolated. They have nothing to do with each other. Classical physics says that a man says that that's a man and that's a tree, and the two are separate from each other. And classical physics says that we, human beings, are totally separate and isolated from objects we perceive, whether that's a rock, a desk, a mountain, or a tree. And classical physics says that the Earth is spinning around really fast while circling the sun and holding together all by gravity. Like, that is what's going on. It's a miracle, really. It's all this hard matter just spinning around and all staying together. And that's pretty simple, right? Now, here's a quick exercise. Look around your room or your desk right now and identify an object. It can be anything at all. So I'll look on my desk and I just can see a water bottle. I found a water bottle. Right? You found one? And, look at that object right now. We can call this an object, and we have it in this blue square here. And then there's you, and you're separate from that object. If I look at that bottle of water, I'm separated from it. I'm not touching it. It's not part of me. It's totally separate things. And now there's some distance in between. And this distance is the gap. It's the space in between you and the object, or me and my water bottle here. And you're separate from that object, right? Totally separate. Well, that's classical physics. And classical physics has been the key contributor to society's paradigm and worldview. So this is society's paradigm and worldview when it comes to our existence. So we believe that there's a world, a planet, and it's hard and physical, and then we're born into this world, and then we exist. And now we're on this planet, existing, and then we die, and then we cease to exist. And that's it. That's how it works. And we believe that we are separate from the object. So if we can see an object over there, we believe we are totally separate from it, and that there's distance in between it. And we believe that birth is when we become conscious, and then life is when we are conscious. We've got our brain developed and we're seeing things and experiencing things. And then death is when we lose consciousness. And then that's it. But I've got a question for you. What is your body made of? What is your body made out of? And, most people think that your body is made out of muscle, bone, blood, and, all of that. And this is the current paradigm and worldview society has. And this is it, just summarized with a few bullet points. So, current paradigm and worldview society has. Things are things, and what we can touch and see are real material objects. And we, as a human observer, are separated and isolated from material objects. And we, as a human observer, are separate and isolated from events that we are not participating in. So if there's an event happening on the news or something, we're totally separate from it. And we, as humans, are physical bodies of flesh, blood, and bone, held to a globe, spinning really fast by gravity, and held together all by gravity. And the physical body and brain comes first when the baby is created, and then consciousness comes when at that moment you're born, and then when you die, consciousness leaves. And we are separate and isolated from the physical world and the events that occur within it. This is current worldview. And that's what everybody thinks, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. But then how do you explain the interconnectedness of different things? Like, how could different things be interconnected if we were separate from everything else? Like, how could there be patterns of existence present in the, present in your income, your behavior, your bank balance, and all of that stuff, if we were all totally separate? And what I started to notice is that one subject would have a lot to do with another subject. Like, how one subject worked would be how another subject worked. And my thoughts in one thing, or my thoughts on a sales call would affect the outcome of the sales call. And my observation would affect my Facebook ads performance. If I was looking at my Facebook ads all the time and worried about them, I'd affect the performance of them. And then my results and my clients' results. If I started to get really good results, then my clients would start to get really good results. And these two were interrelated. If I wasn't getting good results, then my clients weren't getting good results. And how could the 80-20 curve occur everywhere in the world and follow the same pattern if everything was not connected in any way, shape, or form? And society's current paradigm and worldview says these things are separate, and anything seeming interconnected is merely a coincidence. But I noticed I wasn't alone with this issue. Banks were always experiencing strange occurrences between loans in one packet and loans in another totally separate packet. And what I mean by this is, if there was one mortgage that a bank had, and then they had a totally separate mortgage and they were in different packets. So a loan packet is when they combine, say $2 billion worth of loans and they put it in one. Then they have another packet and they put $2 billion worth of loans in that other one. And because they're in two different packets, they're supposed to be totally separate. But banks started to notice that there were strange occurrences. Like if one started to default, if a group of them started to default in one packet, then they would start to default in another packet, and they were all interrelated. And somehow things were not as they seemed. But who was I to question the entire world? I mean, teachers, doctors, everyone, all the scientists, they all said, no, this is it. Who was I to question the entire world? And I had studied and experimented for years, and I still couldn't find the answer. I still couldn't find out why these different things were interrelated. And I just let it be and returned to business as usual and just forgot about it. But then one day, I came across something that just changed everything for me. And it was quantum physics. And classical physics says that, a tree is a tree, a desk is a desk, and a person is a person, right? But in quantum physics, we see that these things aren't really a tree or a desk or a person. We see that they're really just particles spinning around at really fast speed, and there's mostly really nothing. Inside, if we were to look at a tree or a desk under a microscope, really zoomed in, it's mostly nothing. It's just a whole bunch of particles shooting around. And so, we see with classical physics that things are things, but in quantum physics we see that they're really just particles. And classical physics is what we see with our eyes and touch with our hands. And quantum physics is what we see when we zoom right in with a microscope. Now, here's the big conflict. Our eyes see this as a solid. Our eyes see desks as solid things, and we touch it as solid. And we can go away, come back, and it's still here. But with particles, like in quantum physics, it's not solid and mostly nothing at all. And it's just thousands of particles spinning around. And some particles ping away, and new particles join. And classical physics says matter is solid and physical, and quantum physics says matter is not matter at all, but particles spinning around mostly nothing. And I was like, whoa, how can this be? Well, it gets even crazier. And there's this experiment in quantum physics called the double slit experiment. And it drives people nuts, because a lot of people can't figure it out. And what happens is if we fire some particles through a sheet of paper or through a wall and there's two slits in it, then behind, if we had a screen, then those two particles should just fire and hit those different, down through those different slits, right? You'd think that. That's what it should look like. But what we see is that they produce an interference pattern, and it actually can't be explained by classical logic, because we should see these two lines, but we actually see something completely different. And what I want you to do right now is just imagine that there was this tank in a room. Like you've got just this big tank sitting inside a room. And if you come into that room and you observe some particles in it, so you've got special microscope or whatever, and you see 5 particles. We can see these 5 red ones. And you observe 5 particles in fixed positions. Now, the guy leaves the room, goes home, and goes to sleep. And then the next day he comes back to the tank to view the particles again. Except this time, there's 7 of them. Like 2 more have come in, and the 2 blue ones have been added, and they're totally in different positions. And he observes the particles in completely different locations, and two new particles come out of nowhere. And then he's like, what is going on? Am I going crazy? So he calls in his friend here, and his friend comes in, and he says, well, what do you see? Like, you can see 7 particles fixed in these positions, right? And she's like, yes, I can. And now he leaves the room, and he waits for a couple of minutes, and then he decides he's going to come back in and see if he was crazy, because last night when he went home and came back, the particles had changed. So he leaves the room, leaves the girl in here, and then he comes back. And then he says, particles are still in the same position, and there's still 7 of them, right? And the girl says, yep. So now they both leave the room and stop observing the particles. And then they both come back into the room, and they notice that 2 have left, and they've changed positions again. And they're like, what happened? Oh my God, what is going on? Because they were like this before. We left, we came back. Now they've changed, and both of us have observed this. So what is going on? And particles appear fixed when observed by somebody. So when somebody observes particles, then they appear fixed. Nothing changes. But when they are not observed by somebody, it's like they take a life of their own and do whatever they want. So what do particles get up to while nobody is looking? Well, it's like they are everywhere and nowhere at the same time, in every possible position and every possible state. And when somebody observes them, they take a state and a position. And you want to think about it like this. This is a very simple way to think about it. So imagine going into the woods and then observing a tree falling down right in front of you. Like you're walking through the woods, then you just watch it. And you just watch it falling, and then boom, it hits the ground. And you see it all happen. You see the whole thing unfold. And it makes a thud sound when it hits the ground. And you can feel it shake and vibrate with your legs. Now, imagine we could wind back time. Except this time you don't go into the woods. You wait at the forest edge and hang out there for the day. And you don't go into the forest. And does that tree still fall over? We wound back time. Does that tree still fall over? But you're not in the woods this time. You're out of the woods. Does it still make a sound? Like when it falls over and hits the ground, does it still make a sound, or does it still fall over at all? And society's current paradigm and worldview says yes, it most certainly does. That tree will absolutely fall over, you bet it, and when it hits the ground, it's going to make a sound. But quantum physics says that particles are essentially everywhere and nowhere until somebody observes them. And only at the point of observation do particles take a specific state and position. And this means that which means that we actually don't know whether the tree falls down or not unless we are there to observe it. So unless we're there to observe it, we don't know. And so if we wound back time and didn't go into the forest this time, well, we can't say if that tree fell over or not. And we can't say if it made a sound or not, because we don't know. We have to observe it. And obviously there's no way to observe that tree unless you go into the woods and observe it. So, we really don't know. And only at the point of observation do particles take a state and a specific position. So what does this all mean? You're probably thinking, whoa, this is pretty strange and different and out there. What does this all mean? And what does this have to do with you and me and business? Well, do you remember my obsession about discovering the interconnectedness of things? So one subject and another subject, my thoughts and the outcome of a call, and my observation and my Facebook ad performance, and my results and the results of my clients. Well, at a microscopic level, these are all particles. So one subject is just a bunch of particles, and another subject's a bunch of particles. My thoughts are particles, and my outcome of the call is particles. Like my results and my client's results, all of these things were different particles. And this changed the question of my entire investigation. I was wondering how Facebook ads were related to financial markets, and how my thoughts were related to the outcome of a sales call. My original question was, how are two things interrelated? But my new question was, how are two particles interrelated? And it turns out particles are extremely interrelated. And here's how two particles are interrelated. So as we see and experience with our eyes, so large masses of matter attract other masses of matter through gravity. So the reason why we're all stuck to this Earth is because of gravity. And gravity is caused because the mass of the Earth is so big. And as we see with particles under a microscope, large collections of particles attract other particles. So, if there's a large collection of particles, other particles are drawn in. And here's what I want to show you now. So here's that same video I showed you where there's these people joining the sky dance. And here are particles under a microscope. And I want to show you the similarities here. This is fascinating. So you can see as more and more and more people are pulled in and joining the crowd, we see the same sort of thing happen under a microscope with particles. As more and more particles come together and join, more and more particles come together and join. And so we see the same with our eyes and crowds and clapping and all of that. And then we see the same under a microscope with particles. And not only that, but we see the same on the internet, like with YouTube videos. As soon as a video starts getting lots of views, then it starts getting more views. And it has a feedback loop-like effect. And, we see feedback loops present with particles as well. So new particles joining a formation, overall size of the particle formation, and that feeds back around. New particles join, then the overall size of the particles, and it just keeps feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding, and we have a massive positive feedback loop, self-fulfilling. And the 80-20 principle applies to particles as well. So we could say the size of the particle formation versus time. Most of the particles are joined like 20% of the time. And this explained feedback loops and the 80-20 principle, since particles attract particles in a self-fulfilling loop. But there was more, much more. And then I came across this thing called quantum entanglement. And it's this big thing which a lot of people can't understand. And what quantum entanglement says is that if two particles are entangled, that means, if one's facing up, then the other one's always facing down. And if one's facing down, then the other one's facing up. And it always works like this. It's just stuck. Like, one can't go up without one being down, one can't be up without the other being down. And it's entangled. And you can see up, down, up, down. And so this happens when two particles are entangled like this. And when two particles are entangled, they have opposite charges, positive or negative. And the two are always opposites, regardless of how far away they are. It's like they can communicate without traveling space or time instantaneously. They just work like this. And you're probably thinking, I get it, but what does this have to do with real life? Like, I get it, I totally understand this, but what does this have to do with real life? Well, remember how we talked about, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if you take an action, there's going to be an opposite reaction. If you decide to go out and drink, then you're going to be not feeling the best tomorrow. Or if you decide to go to the gym and wake up at 6 a.m., then you're probably going to be feeling pretty good. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And we see this with entangled particles. Action, reaction, action, reaction. And remember my key observations about life and business? So for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And then the mirror, and how your judgments are simply an outwards reflection of your own insecurities. And people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that reflect in their business. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And we become our lowest standards, not our highest dreams. And think about it. How could these observations be correct in every instance if there was not some kind of underlying universal law present in the universe? And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You can see that here. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It's just the same as entangled particles. And how is this like a mirror? We talk about the mirror and how people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that reflect in their business. And, if you judge others, it means you're insecure about yourself. Well, how is this like a mirror? Well, here's a mountain, and here is, its reflection on a lake nearby. And imagine if we just, put a mirror. This is like a mirror. And as it is above, then it appears that below. So, if there's a mountain that appears that tall, then the reflection is the same length. And, if you look at yourself in the mirror, it'll be the opposite way around, but it's just exactly as it was. So as above, so below. And there's like a mirror line in the middle. And it's like action and reaction. And if you judge others, others will judge you, or you'll have a massive fear that others are going to judge you. And if you have a personal issue, then you're going to have a business issue. And, that people don't have life problems. People who don't have business problems, they have life problems that reflect in their business. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And we've got this thing like action, reaction, personal issue, business issue. If one's like that up there, then it's going to be like that down here. And I'd found it. And don't worry if you don't get it right now, I'm going to explain it. And now I'm going to discuss my universal theory of everything when it comes to life and business and your own mind. And there's this famous movie called 1984, and you might have seen it. It's very popular. It's by George Orwell. And there's this quote in the movie, and it says, "He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future." And a lot of people think, like, when they watch the movie, that there's this thing called Big Brother, and Big Brother is this scary government that's in charge of everyone and everything, and none of the people can do anything, and there's these things called thought crimes, and if they, they're not allowed to commit thought crimes. And this guy inside the movie, his job is to rewrite history. So he's literally going into work every day, rewriting history and throwing it in the trash, and putting out new history, which is putting out new history, which is in alignment with the Big Brother. And the quote says, "He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future." And here's the common opinion of 1984. So he who controls the present controls the past. And most people think that's like some sort of evil government. They think that it's this Big Brother thing and that no one's going to be able to get away and that everyone is trapped. And then controls the past controls the future. He who controls the past controls the future. And a lot of people think that's all government. And most people think like 1984 is a horror movie and it's tragic and like it's like government's going to take over the whole world and all of this stuff. That is the common opinion of the movie 1984. And that's actually what I thought the first time I saw it. And I was like, whoa, that's a pretty intense movie. So the quote is, "He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future." But I think George Orwell forgot to put a sentence in here. And he is you. So he who controls the present controls the past. Who controls the past controls the future. He is you, not anyone else. And so this is the real meaning of 1984. He who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. This is all you. You have control of both of these things. All you. And remember quantum physics? How we have quantum entanglement of particles? So for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Action and reaction. These two are always opposites. It's like the mirror. Well, then it hit me. It all of a sudden just made sense. It just went click. So, the quantum entanglement of particles, we can think about it like past and future. So, the way we believe like our past was, or the way we believe we were in the past, is how we're going to be in the future. And if we think negatively about the future, then that same thing is going to show up in our past. And the present is really right here in the middle of this figure 8 thing. And you control the present. Like right now in the present moment, you control it. It's all you. And this was it. It finally made sense. So we've got as above, so below. We've got the mirror, we've got the mountain and how it reflects. And we see it's the same length as it is up there, as it is down there. And it's like quantum entangled particles are the same. As it is up there, so it is down there. As above, so below. And remember my key observations about life and business. So for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if I do something stupid, then I have a stupid, painful outcome. Like if I go out on the weekend and start drinking too much, then during the week, I'm going to have a foggy mind and everything and regret it. Or if I don't go out, then I'm going to feel good because, that was my action. So as above, so below. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And the mirror and how your judgments are simply an outwards reflection of your own insecurities. So if I judge someone else because they're a loudmouth and a show-off, it means that I myself are too I myself are insecure because I am too afraid to go out and be like that. And so, that's how it works. As you judge others, like, that is pretty much how you'll be feeling about yourself internally. So as above, so below. As you judge others is just how you're going to be insecure about yourself. And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And people don't have business problems. They have personal problems that reflect in their business. So that's like as above, so below. If you've got a personal problem, then you're going to have a business problem. And the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. That's like as above, so below. And we become our lowest standards, not our highest dreams, because it's always about the sum average of these things. So it doesn't matter if we make a whole bunch of money, but we have a bad habit that costs us a whole bunch of money. Our lowest denominator is going to create our existence, as above, so below. And if you think into your past memories and live there, like if you're someone who always hangs on to your past and you think back and you think about all these painful memories and how you sucked at times tables and how you didn't ever pass anything and how you're stupid and how you're not successful and all of this, if you live your life back there in the past, then you're going to create more of the same in the future. And it's going to be reconfirming all of your own thoughts because you're like, oh, life sucked back then, so life's probably going to suck like moving forward, and it just keeps recreating itself. Because it's like as above, so below. If you think it is back then it's going to be in the future. And if you think it was awesome in the future, it's going to appear like it was back in the past. And if you think into your past memories and live there, you will entangle with your future and create more of the same there. And if you think into your future and live there, you will entangle with your past and create more of the same there. But if you live here now, in the moment, you control your past and your future. And you take the steering wheel of your own life. So now you are in control of it, and you're not living in your past or too much in your future. And that's really where most people fail to live. Most people are paralyzed. Most people are paralyzed of who they are based on past memories, and that they're too afraid to make any sort of changes or any actions to create like the future that they want, because their past is dictating their future. And people who live too much in their future, they're too paralyzed to do anything now, and so they create more of that appears in the past. And remember feedback loops? So, if there's if a cause will create an effect, and quite often the effect of a cause will come back around and feed back into the cause, and it spirals around like this, like a feedback loop. Well, mental feedback loops occur when one thought causes an effect of more thought, which then creates more thought and sets off a vicious, self-fulfilling cycle. And so what you think is what you think about, and what you think about is what you think, and what you think is what you think about, and it just spirals and spirals and spirals, and this can be positive or this can be negative. And it really looks like this. This is what feedback loops look like. And this is past, present, future. And if you live in the past, if you're constantly dredging up memories of your past and you're thinking about how painful it was back then you lose control of your present moment. You are too paralyzed to take action. You can't be clear-headed. You can't get things done. And you can't take action because you're just paralyzed because of the fear of the past. And you also lose the future. Because you're living in the past, you lose the future and you just create more of the same there. And so if you live in the past, you create more of the same in the present and more of the same in the future. And it's not just like linear, it's often exponential. So if the more you live in the past and the more you dredge up those memories and you have negative emotions and negative thoughts, that's negative feedback and it starts amplifying. Because remember, feedback loops are self-fulfilling. They start amplifying up. So if you're having bad thoughts about the past, that's going to start to become worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And you're going to start spiraling downwards. And that's how it works. And if you live here in the future, you lose control of here and here. You lose control of your present and you lose control of your past because you're too much in the future. And the real correct place to live is right here in the now, right here, right now, like the present moment. And you want to have small, tiny thought of the future and small, tiny thought of the past. So you want to think into the future to kind of design the life that you want. You want to think, what do I want? Think into the future, dream about it for a little bit, write it all down, then come back to this present moment, and now, okay, let's do it, let's put it into action. And this is really what we see with quantum entanglement too. If you are over on one of these sides, you create the opposite. You create exactly what you don't want. And he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. And he is you. And if you choose to live here in the now and take action and and put things into motion right here, right now, when you just use your mind to go venture into the future a little bit, imagine what you want, come back, put it into action. If you do that, then you are fully in control of your entire existence. However, if you go out into the past or the future, you lose control of it. Now, let me bring this back to everyday life, because these are still concepts and everything. I want to bring it back and show you that this stuff is powerful beyond measure for creating the change that you want in your life and in your business, making money, changing who you are, getting everything you always want. And so me at 21 years old, I was broke and was anxious, depressed, could hardly leave the house. Then 26 years old, worth more than 20 million, living in Manhattan, and have way more courage and everything. Well, this is how I created it, with feedback loops, with a absolutely fundamental understanding of feedback loops and in particle physics, quantum physics, everything. I understand this thing like nothing else. And so what you think is what you think about. So I decided to start controlling my thoughts. I became a conscious observer of my thoughts. I would kind of sit throughout the day, instead of ignoring my thoughts or falling victim to them and just, whatever thought came into my mind, just rushing off and doing it, I sat there and would feel the thought come on, and I could catch it. And I could be like, okay, what's this telling me to do? And so if I was sitting down to do some work, and I had this feeling all of a sudden like, I should go and get a haircut, I'd be like, I can see what's happening here. I need to do this work. And so I'd catch the thought and just throw it away. And then, if I was sitting down on a Friday night trying to do some work, and then my friends were like, do you want to come out? I'd catch it and be like, nope, I know what's going to happen here, and throw it out. Because I knew what I think is what I'm going to think about, and then I'm going to go out, and then it's going to start, going into those old patterns and become self-fulfilling. So what you think is what you think about. And I decided to start becoming conscious of these thoughts and start controlling them and start living in the now and, and becoming conscious of all of this. And it has feedback. So as I start to think about, oh, wow, I'm doing good. Like, I've been following these new habits for like 20 days now, 30 days now. As I started to build up momentum, it started self-fulfilling. It started feeding back on itself. And, at first, I just started not going out and not getting drunk, but I'd still drink every now and then. And then it ended up becoming so self-fulfilling that I stopped drinking completely. And I haven't had an alcoholic drink probably I've had like one or two glasses of wine in the past year. And so, this was a self-fulfilling feedback loop that I set off. And, what you think is what you think about, and what you think about often becomes your belief, because the more you think about something, that becomes your belief about something. So I used to think, oh, I always go out on Friday nights, I always drink a lot, and then I'm depressed about it. So that was what I thought, and that became my belief. And when you have a belief about something, when you believe that you are a certain way, and that you're stuck and you can't change, and that's just who you are, well, your belief becomes your reality. So when I thought that way, that was just my reality. It just kept happening, and I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. This is just who I am. I hated it, but I was like, this is just what it is. And so your belief becomes your reality. And, this feedback loop, it was used both ways in my life. So when I was 21 years old, it was all going downwards. It was spiraling downwards. So I experienced negative feedback loops firsthand about how bad things could get. I started off shy, got shyer, until I was just like paralyzed and crippled with fear. I couldn't really do anything. But then I took control of it all, and I started building them up the other way. And then out of it didn't seem like much at first, and then woof, out of nowhere, just like these exponential curves happen, it grew up and exploded to this. And the best thing is I'm not even getting started. This is just that 20 million is just the long, short tail of another exponential curve which is about to fire off. So I'm not even getting started. And this is what you have to do. This is how I did it. And I had a conceptual understanding of our existence. And then I had a conceptual understanding of feedback loops and quantum physics and everything. I understood it all. I created all of the models, wrote them all down, understood them, and then put them into practice. And here's how society currently views reality. So current paradigm and worldview is trees are trees, or that's just a desk and I'm just a person. This is who I am, can't change. And we believe that, birth comes first, you become conscious, then you live a life, and then death, you lose consciousness. And this is me, this is my body, and this is my body of flesh, blood, and bone, and I am who I am, and there's nothing I can do about changing it. And this comes by really answering the questions, well, who am I? Be yourself, stick to your roots, all of these things. And here's our current paradigm and worldview. There's an object, distance, and then me. And I am separate from my object. There's distance in between the two things. I am separate and isolated from the world around me, and there's nothing I can do to change it. And mental feedback loops occur when one thought causes an effect of more thought, which then creates more thought and sets off a vicious self-fulfilling cycle. And if you ask the question, well, who am I? And you look at your current situation now, and if it's not very good, then that belief confirms that reality. You're like confirmed identity. This is who I am. This is how things have gotten out of control. Because people in bad situations, they're like, who am I? And it's a bad situation. And then that reality is confirmed. And here's a new paradigm and worldview that I'm proposing. Now, here's the big question. What came first? The physical body and the brain, and then human consciousness and life as we experience it. That's what most people think. Or human consciousness and then the illusion of the physical body. Just imagine this for a second. What if we were conscious first, and then we just had the illusion of a physical body and the illusion of everything around us? Well, here's the thing. We really can never know for sure because, there is no way to know for sure. So what the problem is that our current paradigm and worldview has a bias towards this one. So they believe that the physical body and the brain came first, then the human consciousness, and it's really jammed on the left-hand side, saying that that is how life is. Like, and the way you're born is, that's everything. Like, if you're born a particular way, then you're like that forever. It's like if you were dumb when you were 2 years old, well, you're going to be dumb forever. If you're dumb when you're 10 years old doing times tables, well, then you're dumb forever, because that's just who you are. That's your brain. And so we're currently jammed on the left-hand side there. It's our current paradigm and our worldview. And it has a bias towards that. However, I propose a new paradigm and worldview that sits more on this side, but without forgetting about the other one entirely. So nowhere near as jammed as that one is on the right, because we can't forget about taking action. But what we think is massively, massively important on our situation. In fact, what we think about our situation can actually change our situation. But what our situation is can't really change what our situation is or how we think about it. So that's why I think that it is fundamentally important to bring the bias back onto this side, but not the whole way, just a little bit like that. Because if you're in a poor situation, you can't look at your surroundings and be like, well, I'm in a poor situation, therefore I'm forever in a poor situation. That's hopeless. You need to be able to change your beliefs and change your thoughts, and then you can actually get yourself out of that situation. And here's a sentence I came up with that pretty much says it in one sentence. It doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. So read that a couple of times. It doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. And the thing is that we have these feedback loops everywhere. We've got our belief and our reality, and our belief becomes our reality. So if our current reality isn't the best, then we're pretty much forever doomed unless we change the belief about it. And the key is to really intervene with the belief, because we can't intervene with the reality. Like, someone isn't just going to come up to you and give you $1 million, and you're just not going to win lotto one day. And so this is how people have gotten jammed. You need to change your belief, and instead of saying, who am I, you need to ask the question, who am I becoming? And you need to intervene this benign circle right here. We need to drop in on this loop and intervene and change it by changing your thoughts and your beliefs. And then what happens is once we intervene and we change our belief, so if I think, who am I? And I'm a shy, awkward person who has no chance of any success. Well, that's going to become my reality. And nothing could change my reality. My parents weren't going to give me any money. No one was just going to hand me any money. So I realized, well, I just had to change my belief. May as well change it. Let's see if it works or not. So I intervened here and I changed my belief. So I was like, I am becoming like the best salesman there is, even though I was too awkward to even leave the house. So, I turned it from something that was so awkward into something that was, I'm the best salesman there is. Like, I am an excellent salesman. I intervened. And then when you intervene with the belief, and then you need to take massive action here in confidence with the new beliefs. So, remember here I said it's not about just what you believe, it still takes work. So I'm not saying it doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because without work, it won't become anything. This work is still important. And that's why on this bias scale here between, physical and material reality and not material reality, just quantum reality, I'm not saying we can forget completely about material reality. We cannot do that. We have to take action. We have to do things. Thoughts on their own won't do anything. So we need to have a thought, and then we need to do action. And we just need to keep taking action and reflect like quickly back and forth between the two. So, as I'm taking action at the end of each day, I want to reflect. I want to be like, okay, today what happened? How could I have made it better and everything? And then bam, straight back into it tomorrow, action, 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 action. Then take time to reflect. Okay, how did things go? Action, 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 action. You need to move between the two things, and you can't get jammed on any one side, because people that just take wild action and never reflect on anything never achieve anything. And people that just imagine things and build virtual fantasies in their minds, they never actually, make it come into existence in reality. So that's why I proposed one that's more on this side, but still not forgetting the other. And so once we have our beliefs and our thoughts, then we take massive action here in confidence with our new beliefs. And then we experience our reality and our confirmed becoming. And as we start to believe different things, as we start to improve our beliefs and then start taking massive action, then we experience our new reality becoming. Because massive action with massive belief creates results. And then that's not enough on its own. We still need to experience feedback. Because if I have a belief, like I'm going to become an awesome salesman, and then I have an action which is starting making calls, starting to do strategy sessions, well, what if my reality was, and my confirmed becoming, was that I wasn't making any sales? What if I'm not making any sales and I'm not actually selling people? Well, now I'm like, well, what? But I had changed my belief and I changed my action. Well, that's why you need to listen to the feedback. And when the feedback comes back in, you need to be like, okay, well, what can I change? What am I doing wrong and what am I doing right? And then when you get that feedback, you need to listen to it. You need to be like, okay, well, maybe I should change this, or maybe I should change that, and maybe I need to take more action here. And you adjust it, and then you do it again, and then you listen to the feedback, do it again, listen to the feedback, do it again, listen to the feedback, do it again. And it's a feedback loop like this. And you need to have the belief, you need to have the action, then you need to make it come into existence, and then you need to listen to the feedback and adjust the belief and the actions. It's a cycle like this, and each little part is just as important as the other part. Your belief is just as important as your actions, seeing it come into reality is just as important as the other ones, and the feedback is just as important as well. All four of these things are critically important. And you can have gain. So gain is when you're experiencing positive on both. So as my beliefs are growing, my actions are growing. And as my actions are growing, my confirmed reality is growing. And as my confirmed reality is growing, boom, my beliefs are growing. And it's amplifying, and it's gaining, and it's going up, 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 up. And each time it goes up, it's going up further. And that's how we start to see those exponential curves. However, this can get you the wrong way too. Once you start getting down in your beliefs, then you start taking less action. Once you start having bad beliefs and less action, you start seeing less things in reality. And then once you start seeing things in reality, you start getting feedback, and then you decrease your beliefs again, decrease your actions, decrease your reality, decrease the feedback, and it just keeps spiraling down and out of control, going downwards. So you have to be so careful that you've got these things going up instead of down. You have to be going for gains, not losses. And you have to understand how each different phase of this feedback cycle is critically important. You cannot ignore any one part. They're each as important as the other. And so here's the quote. It doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. And that's the real secret to everything. You need to change your belief, take massive action, confirm the reality, and experience the feedback and iterate and adjust. And remember the particles experiment? How one guy was in the room observing 5 particles in fixed positions. And then he left the room, stopped observing them. Then he came in, and there were more particles, and they were in different positions. Well, when quantum physics, matter, what we call matter, like that, my drink bottle, and whatever object you found on your desk, or a tree, matter can't be observed without a thinking participant. And so what they've found is that there's no way to actually view reality, there's no way to experience reality unless there is a thinking participant involved. It's actually a human mind that is required to see and experience any sort of existence of matter. And when there is no thinking participant there to observe it, it's like there's nothing there at all. And what we see and experience in life is not reality. It's more reality exposed to our method of questioning. And simply put, your hypothesis affects your outcome. And your hypothesis doesn't directly control your outcome. If it did that, it would be too easy. If I said, I'm going to make $1 billion tomorrow, and then tomorrow I don't make $1 billion, well, I haven't yet figured out how to do that one. Some people have. I mean, there's people like Carl Icahn and them who make more than $1 billion a day on some days. And it's because, they've taken so much action and built their beliefs so big that they can, when they say that, they mean it. When they say, I'm going to make $1 billion today, they mean it. And they mean it more than you mean, like, I'm going to get up out of bed on time today. Like, that's the difference between someone who is a ruthless winner and someone who can't get out of bed, is because they've built up their beliefs and they've confirmed those beliefs with their actions, and they've built very strong, invincible feedback loops. And your hypothesis affects your outcome. And so remember how we discussed this in the natural law in the equation, for the consulting equation and for the natural law equation? Well, imagine it like this. Your current situation is what you've got right now. This is what you're experiencing. If you look around and you pick up your drink bottle, you pick up your phone and whatever, this is your current situation. And then it's not enough to just have a current situation. We need to have some sort of intent. Because without intent, it's like we're just taking a random walk in the park, or we turn up to an airport without a ticket. Without intent, we're going to experience a random result. Because life is always moving, we can't live without intent. It just doesn't work that way. So if our current situation is what we've got right now, then we have to form a hypothesis, and that is pretty much intent. So what do I want? What do I want to become? Who do I want to become? It's not who am I now, because that's not a good hypothesis. So let's say my hypothesis is I want to start making money. I want to start a business. Now I've got my current situation and I've got my hypothesis. Now I can take action, and I want to choose the best action possible for achieving what I want to achieve. And I pick that, and then I take action, and then I get my new situation. And, when the two collide together, when the current situation collides with the action and the hypothesis, we get a new situation. And this becomes your new current situation. It keeps going around and around and around. There's feedback loops. And you can see here this arrow from the pink circle all the way around to the blue. It says feedback. We have to listen to the feedback and iterate and adjust. Because if I've got a bad situation now and I say I want to make $1 billion tomorrow, and tomorrow I try to make $1 billion and I don't, well, I can't just give up. I need to listen to the feedback and adjust my hypothesis and everything again, and adjust my actions. And it's an iterative process. And so let's say I've got $500 in the bank, which I used to, and I wanted to start a consulting business. That's what I wanted to do. That was my hypothesis, and that was my current situation. And then I started a consulting business. That was my action. I registered the company and everything, and I started making cold calls. But then I didn't get any clients. You know, people said to me, oh, it's all right, you know, I just want to think about it, oh, I don't want to sign up right now. So then I got no clients. But I learned lessons. When I didn't get clients, I learned lessons. Like I thought, okay, I don't say that thing, or I do say that thing, or I be silent at this point. And, you know, I took that feedback and I was able to use that feedback and readjust my hypothesis and readjust my actions. And each time I did this around and around and around and around and around, and each time I listened to that feedback, adjusted my actions, took action again, listened to my feedback, took action again, I started to get closer to, you know, the right thing to do in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Now, it's very important here that you have to have a hypothesis, otherwise you're taking action and you've got nothing to compare it to. So setting a hypothesis is just as important as taking action, and taking action is just as important as setting a hypothesis. The two are equally important, otherwise you'll get lost. And so here's the quote: "It doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true." And you have to intervene, this benign circle. You have to intervene by changing your thoughts and beliefs. Then you have to take massive action in confidence with your new beliefs. And then you have to experience your reality becoming. You have to see things come into existence. And then you listen to the feedback. Like, are things going downwards and away, or are things coming a bit closer? You get a sense of what works and what doesn't, and you're able to adjust your hypothesis and your actions and keep going around and around and around. And so it's beliefs, it's actions, it's seeing it come into reality, and then it's feedback. This is the process. This is the master algorithm. And so here's where people have gone wrong. People don't set a hypothesis, and they don't take any action, and they don't listen to any feedback. This is most people, and this truly is how. We now know the master algorithm of human evolution and your consciousness and your own mind and everything. Right? I just showed it to you. I figured it all out. So, if people don't set a hypothesis, and then they don't take any action, and then they don't listen to any feedback, then how the hell is anyone going to achieve anything? Because they've got all three parts missing, right? And that's sadly most people. So if that's you, this is a big wake-up call that, it's obvious why you haven't achieved what you want to achieve. It's so blindingly obvious. It's just right there. Like, that's why. Now we can see different other situations. So someone might set a hypothesis, but then they don't take any action. And when they don't take any action, they don't receive any feedback. So I might think, well, I'm going to start a consulting business. That's my hypothesis. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to start making money. But then I just get stuck in that thought, and I enjoy the fantasy of thinking about it, but then I don't take any action. And then when I don't take any action, I don't receive any feedback. And so I'm again stuck. Nothing's happening. And then here's a third situation. People set a hypothesis, then they take action. And that's almost figuring it all out. That's, you're saying, I want to start a consulting business, and now you're actually taking action and starting a consulting business. But you don't listen to any feedback. People don't do enough iterations. They try it one time, it doesn't work, they give up. Of course. You think you're not going to get it right on your first try. It's like doing your first sales call and it doesn't go the way you planned. That doesn't mean you give up. That's abandoning the master algorithm after one iteration. So, when you set your hypothesis and take action, you have to listen to the feedback, and then you have to change your hypothesis again, change your action again, and keep going, and you have to keep at it. And so this is what it really looks like. This is really the master algorithm, is you must set a hypothesis, take action, listen to the feedback, and then iterate and improve by repeating. And then again, hypothesis, action, feedback, iterate and improve, repeat, hypothesis, action, feedback, iterate and improve, repeat. Hypothesis, action, feedback, iterate and improve, repeat. Right? It just goes again and again and again and again. Each time you get better and better and better and better and better and better, and then before you know it, boom, that whole exponential curve has triggered off and it is just sky high, climbing. And it doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. Here's the circle. And really, all you think you are is an identity that your mind created, and then the optimization engine is jammed. You know, when you answer the question, who am I, so many times, and you're like, this is who I am, then you get stuck. You know, you get really stuck, and, you know, it's like you've got this mask on, and that's just who you are. You're stuck with this mask. And, you know, then when you're stuck like that, your optimization engine is jammed. You can't change anything because your identity is too strong. And you have to take off the mask and realize that you can become whoever you want to be in life. And you have to just realize that whoever you think you are right now, it's really just a mask. You know, everything is really just an illusion that you've just created, and you can change it. You just have to change your beliefs, because you can't wait for the illusion to come real when the mind is creating the illusion. You have to change what the mind thinks, then see it come into the illusion and keep changing it like that. Because we can't wait for, if we have a shitty situation in our reality, we can't wait for the reality to change when it's our mind that creates the reality. And this is what Shakespeare meant. So, all the world's a stage, and we are merely actors. That really is it. You know, we choose what mask we wear. And all the world's a stage, and we are merely actors. And to be or not to be is the question you have to ask yourself when it comes to your mask and choice of character. Like, what character do you want to play in this game called life? And when you believe that, you know, the character you're playing is just fixed and that's all there is, then that's when you get stuck and you can't change anything. And then naturally, you start to desire something which you're not. And so, you know, you need to, you need to understand that it's your choice. And the question that you must ask yourself all the time is, who are you becoming? Instead of who am I, it's who am I becoming? And it doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. And here is something, here is a pinup, which is available for download below this video. And it's called What Do You Believe pinup. And so it doesn't matter what is true, only what you believe is true, because with work, that will become true. And I found the crown of consulting in the gutter, picked it up with a sword, and it was mine. And whatever crown you desire, it's lying in the gutter too. All you have to do is pick it up with some hard work and put it on. And so, you know, we've got this loop here of belief in reality. And we believe that, most people in society believe that their reality is all there is, and then their mind is just, it's nothing. But really, it all begins with the beliefs. You have to intervene with the beliefs. You have to change your beliefs, then you have to change your actions, and then you need to listen to the feedback and make iterations and improvements, and let that feedback loop start cranking right up, and you'll start to experience those exponential curves. And that really is why there is a big gap between the rich and the poor. And that really is why there's 80-20 distribution and exponential distribution in this world, because it's all based on feedback loops. And once you believe that you can do something, you start taking massive actions because you believe it, then you start experiencing reality, you start adjusting your process and everything, and you just keep going, and you keep going, and you keep cycling this thing around, because this is the master algorithm to everything. So once you hack this thing, once you hack into it, take over the system and let it run for you instead of against you, that's when your entire life will start to change. And this is coming from someone who was 50 grand in debt with $500 in his bank account, who was too anxious to leave the house or talk to anybody, to someone who seemingly out of nowhere built it up to, more than $20 million. So this isn't just some bullshit theory, which I've explained to you throughout this video. It happened, and it's still happening, and I'm only really getting started. I'm just around the corner really from $100 million a year. Like, I know my company's going to do that next year. This year it'll do 50 million. The year after it'll do 100. And I know if we can do 100 million, then I know we can do 1 billion. And this feedback loop thing is really, really, really powerful, because if it used to go against me and I thought I could do nothing, it was worthless. I learned how to hack it, and now I feel sorry for anyone who ever has to compete with me in anything. Because, the way I think about it, it's like I'm pretty much like an alligator, and I just have clamped jaw on what I want. It's like my jaw is clamped over the prey, and there is no way, even with a crowbar, to pry that thing open. And so I feel sorry for anyone in my markets that have to compete with me, because the only way I will ever not win is if I die. So I am just really ruthless and savage towards getting, my goals, achieving the things which I want to achieve. And that is how you have to be too. You have to be ruthlessly competitive to what you want, and you have to believe it. You have to really be able to see it in your vision. You have to be hungry for it, and then you have to take actions that are in accordance with that belief, and then you have to adjust and iterate with the feedback and just go around and around and around and around again. And that is how you get what you want. That is how you change yourself. Like I said, I've been able to fully transform myself from someone who was completely shy, horrible situation and everything, to having more than I ever thought was possible. And so that is how you do it. And so that's it for this video. I know this was a long one, but this one was massively important because I really wanted to convey this topic and show you how it all comes together. Show you why you are the way you are, why some people succeed, why some people fail. And I wanted to do it in a way where I actually showed you with real life evidence along the way, and with the different scientific methods and everything, just to show you how I can pull it all together and create that one unified theory and that one master algorithm of your existence. Because your master algorithm really is everything to you. That's who you are. That's your reality. And people have forgotten what the master algorithm is, and they've forgotten how to make it work for themselves. And that's all we need to do, is remember what it is, don't forget what it is, and then use it every day to get what we want. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.